There's people who would probably have never gotten into game programming if it weren't for ROMs.
Yeah, I'm
and
completely fine with that.
hacking. You're fine with that non-existing.
Yeah,
so you're
fine
fine.
with that.
You heard it here first. Gerald will kill your dreams.
Because
Welcome back to Digitally Distracted. I am Game Dave.
I'm Gerald.
And it's time for another wonderful episode. But today it's going to be a little intense, Gerald. And I know you don't have a lot of background in this, but that might actually be beneficial because you'll have sort of a different outlook on this. And your understanding of art and media will also be beneficial. So this is a topic I have discussed on the channel in a separate video, which went a bit, I would say, semi-viral. Semi-viral. So to give you some background on this, emulation and ROMs is kind of what we're going to be talking about a little bit here. And to give you the real background, Gerald, and for our viewers who may not be well-versed in emulation and ROMs, an emulator essentially is a software executable program that emulates, in this respect, an old video game console. So, and I'm sure you've seen limited things with that, at the very least with your experience in emulation and ROM. So basically you can go online and you download an emulator, whether it's Nestopia or Nesticle or some sort of NES emulator, and it acts like a front end for the NES. So you download it, and then you can download ROMs of video games. So the emulator is
Gotcha.
An emulator tries to emulate a console as best as it can.
So the hardware.
It emulates the hardware using a software program that someone designs.
Yes.
And then ROMs, however, are not emulating anything because a ROM is an exact digital file of the game.
Gotcha.
So if you have an NES cartridge, take that NES cartridge and use there's a hardware device that can basically pull the information that is on the read-only memory, the ROM, pulls it off of the circuit board, basically the chips that hold the information, and can create a digital file of it that can be accessed by the emulator.
Man, that's cool.
Yeah, so a ROM is exact. There is no, as long as you have a clean dump of a ROM, basically a downloaded version of what's on your cartridge that's saved to it, all the memory, all the files, all the data that makes that game exist on your Nintendo or Super Nintendo or N64, you take that and the emulator can play that. And the emulator may not perfectly emulate the NES. It tries its best to make a software recreation of how the NES would read that ROM file.
Gotcha.
But if you take that same ROM and you download that from, say, let's take an expensive game, Little Samson, very expensive NES game. Some people sell it for hundreds of dollars, which is just stupid. And you pull the ROM off of that cartridge and then load that ROM up into another cartridge, it will play on the NES just like it's the real thing because that ROM is the game. Okay, so ROMs are perfect recreations of what that cartridge would do. The downfall is the emulation side, where not all emulators are perfect, and there are little things where you can tell, okay, that's emulated, that's not played on the actual original hardware. But things have got to the point where it's, for the older consoles, it's almost indistinguishable. Like, you would never know the difference. If I showed you footage from an emulated system and the actual system, you probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
Gotcha.
Aside from the fact that the emulator might look higher quality, just because it's software emulated. You can blow things up and scale it for the older games that have a small resolution.
Gotcha.
So that's the basics of an emulator and a ROM. The emulator is basically trying to mimic the console, and the ROM is usually from an actual cartridge, so that ROM is the exact game. So it is a preserved digital file of the actual cartridge's game.
Gotcha.
So it plays exact. Emulation has been around a long time and really started for me in high school. It's the first time I ever experienced that. Now, I went to high school in the early 2000s, so we're talking 2001 and on. So for some of you, I might seem old. For some of you, I might seem young. In that case, look at Gerald over there. Look, he's got an interview right after the show. For those of you watching the video version. I remember playing, it was the Super Nintendo. So it was called ZSNES. And that was my first experience with an emulation situation. I was playing Mario Kart in a lab computer in high school. And I blew my mind. The teacher didn't know about it. But these smart electronics kids figured out how they worked. And, the emulation was okay back then. It was still stuttery. Computers weren't as fast as they are now. And the emulators have gotten better and better and better. And NES and SNES emulation, I would say, is near perfect. So at least as close as it can be. And it can play almost anything. So then there's always been this sort of issue of the legality of using an emulator. Emulators, perfectly legal, because the patents on the NES and things like that have run out. So to emulate the way it worked, totally legal. You're emulating what that hardware did. The ROMs is the tricky part. Because essentially, if I take Super Mario Brothers on NES and I dump the ROM from that cartridge and then upload it to the internet for people to download, is that infringing on anything or not? And I'm not going to tell you my opinion on it until we get into it, so that I don't pervert your thoughts on it. And that ROM file, of course, 100% anyone would agree, if you take that ROM file of Super Mario Brothers and try to sell it to people so they can download that ROM, that is strictly illegal and wrong, and that should never happen. But someone who uploads it to an archive for other people to share with other people so they can use it and experience that game in an emulator, that's where it gets a little bit tricky. Overarching law would say that's illegal anyway, because you're duplicating a copywritten work. So for your understanding of it, because you're not as deep into this, which is a good thing, because you'll have a different opinion than a lot of us will.
Right.
Think of it like the old days, if you remember when VCRs showed up.
Right.
We lived through the VCR age of copyright infringement, where you would watch movies and they would talk about how it's illegal to copy that movie. Don't you copy videotapes? So it's in the same vein of taking your copy of Batman, the 1989 film, and using a dual head VCR and copying that tape to a blank and selling it. That, of course, super illegal.
Right.
Copying it for backup and archival, it was even to the point where, if you remember, I think it was football specifically, wasn't it?
Right, yeah.
Like there's this thing where it was illegal. You should not be able to tape the big game, and then for later, they were saying you should not be able to video record television. That's illegal. It's illegal to copy television. And there was a big court case about that, and I think it was found that it is not illegal as long as it's for your own personal use, because that's the whole point. It's basically modern. It was the old school version of DVR.
Right.
Was to copy. Well, I can't watch this. I work. I'll set my VCR to tape it. Watch when I get home.
Right.
And archive it in a way. And there were people who would copy TV shows for their own archival so they could go back and watch them again, because
kind of like their own personal Netflix or DVD set or whatever.
Because back then it wasn't as easy to access television shows. And they weren't releasing all, TV shows didn't come out on VHS tape like they do on DVD now.
Correct.
Now you can get DVD sets. Netflix has TV shows, Hulu. But back then it wasn't. It was a way to archive it. And a lot of people see ROMs as an archival thing where you're preserving video game history. And we'll get into a lot of the details and the nitty gritty. And there's camps all over the place. There's probably 4 different viewpoints of this. It's not black or white. There's a lot of gray area.
Yeah, I have a sort of a knee-jerk opinion.
Okay.
That I'm interested in hearing about the different camps, and I'm keeping an open mind and seeing kind of like, maybe that does make more sense.
Yes. Now, why this came up from 2 viewers of Digitally Distracted and the YouTube channel. This came from 2 viewers, and it's based on a video I made because emulation ROMs have always sort of been there. I've used ROMs. A lot of people in the gaming community use ROMs, especially for those old school games. And that's where my use was for the most part. And here's what's sort of happened. One of the more popular ROM websites that hosted those ROMs for free to download and archive them fairly well and fairly safely, because a lot of ROM sites it can be like, ooh, I got to download these ROMs. Oh, am I going to get a virus using this website?
Right.
So one of the more popular ones, which is Emu Paradise, emulator, Emu
Mm-hmm.
Paradise. A lot of people say Emu Paradise. I don't know where they're getting that from. It looks like Emu, but it's Emu Paradise. Put out a statement, and I was at my computer, and I saw it through a tweet. They put out a statement that they will no longer be offering ROMs. They've removed all ROMs from the site. I was like, what?
Right.
So
now, having said that, what other service do they offer? Like if that's their...
Just archival.
Okay.
Yep. So you can download emulators and ROMs from their site, and they sort of archived pretty much
but
any
they're
ROM.
no longer offering ROMs, so it's just emulators that they're offering?
Well, they're really nothing now.
Yeah, that's my point.
Yeah. It's basically killed their site.
Right.
And they're like, oh, we're not going anywhere. I'm like, well, nobody's going to go to your site anymore.
Right.
You don't
Why?
just to download emulators would be the only purpose. And no offense, because I was a big user of Emulators. That's where I got any ROM I wanted, I would go to Emulators if I needed one. And for me, it was more for translation patches. So to get a version of a game. So there's people who will homebrew translate a lot of the Japanese games that I like to talk about on FamiCorner. And for me, that's where ROMs come in, because you have to patch the Japanese ROM with this homemade translation so that you can play it in English or whatever language. And you can't do that with the cartridge. You can't patch the cart. At least, well, I can. I don't have the hardware to do that. So I would download the ROM, patch it, and then use that if I needed to, depending on the game. Because some games on the Famicom, you might want to translate those to get the story elements or maybe certain menus, things like that. Most of the games I talk about on FamiCorner can be played without knowledge of Japanese, without patches. But some, it benefits you to patch ROMs to play them so you can get the story. The reason it happened, I was working on a FamiCorner that day. I saw the tweet, went, and the ROMs were inaccessible. And this all goes back to a issue. They basically got wet feet. They got a little scared because of Nintendo. Nintendo has been the most hardcore about sort of cracking down on ROMs.
Well, they do have a lot of IP.
A lot of IP. And with their services like the Virtual Console, they were still, in a way, selling and able to make a profit on these older games.
Right.
Where other companies, not so much, And they sued 2 ROM companies for copyright infringement and loss of, sale. They were saying that they were making money on it. And these are not sites I used, and I can see where Nintendo was coming from. I can see both camps. They had a lot of weird advertisements and things like that, and they were using copyright material in their branding, and so the site made money in the sense of that advertising on the site. So they're definitely bringing in money, and people are only going to those sites for those ROMs. And the other issue with those sites is they offered ROMs from much newer systems as well, which I don't think is if you can. My thing with ROMs is if you can buy the game readily, then you shouldn't be downloading a ROM of it and trying to get it for free. That's, I think, common sense would say that. If it's a game that you can access, I can go to the store and buy it right now, or I can go on the eShop and download it right now. Yeah, so you shouldn't be downloading 3DS ROMs.
Right,
You shouldn't be downloading PS4 ISOs of rips of Blu-rays. I don't agree with at all. And they were suing these 2 sites, and Emu Paradise got scared, and that's why they stopped, because of Nintendo. And a lot of people, rightly so, were upset at Nintendo and were disappointed in the way that Emu Paradise responded, because it was sort of a safer website when it came to downloading ROMs. I don't know about the other 2. I can't speak for the other 2. Never visited them. And very recently, I believe in the month of November, the case settled on those 2 sites. And Nintendo won a $12.2 million lawsuit against them for that copyright infringement. Will they ever get that money? Probably not. They just bankrupted them and they turn over all their ROMs and everything.
Right.
So here are the questions. This is from Gaming with Spoons, who actually had a Q&A question last time.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Tonberry King 128. With Nintendo buckling down on ROM sites, how do you think this will hurt the retro gaming scene and fan translations of games? Do you think emulation will die? Hashtag digitally distracted. And then Charles Stewart on the YouTube, he left a comment on one of our episodes saying, this is a part of a larger comment, but last thing, would you please comment on Nintendo doing the absolute insane thing of suing a married middle-class family $12 million for running a ROM site? I mean, to me, I'm frustrated and kind of mad at them for this. There is digital backwards compatibility, a small library for their consoles that do, pushing the Nintendo online service to purchase for those retro games. So it's scarce digital access for certain Nintendo games, things like that. Holding out those games, making you buy them multiple times, that was a big issue. A lot of people's responses were Nintendo will have the virtual console. You would buy Mario, and then Wii U came out, you had to buy it again. You couldn't just you could transfer them, I think, but you had to pay a fee, I think, to transfer some of the games. But keep putting out the same game over and over again, having you rebuy them over and over again. People didn't like that.
And I get that. I definitely get that.
But basically they're saying there's no way to back up those games. There's no cross-save for older games, pushing out their mini consoles. Just makes me want to skip Nintendo products for a while, just like I did when Microsoft tried their DRM fiasco when the Xbox One launched. So really, they want to talk about this issue, and they're asking me and us about that because I did a video that day. The same day I saw that tweet and Emu Paradise went down, I made a video on it, and it got a surprising number of views and a lot of positive response, because I didn't say that this was going to kill game preservation necessarily, but I said it sets a precedent that if ROMs cannot be archived and you cannot archive these old school games, does that mean video game preservation might die in the future? I don't know. And I won't give you my full opinion on what I said in the video yet. So here's, just based on that, what are your thoughts on emulation and ROMs? Now that I've given you a full overview of what it is. Sorry for talking so long. I know a lot of commenters be like, Dave, let Gerald talk.
Right.
I had to get it all out.
It's important context. I needed to be brought up to speed.
So what is your gut? You said you had a gut reaction.
I did.
What is your thought on the idea of emulation? I don't care what your opinion is, because it's totally legal.
Right.
There is nothing. You're emulating a system that is out of patent. There is no legal issue.
Right.
The gray area is ROMs. And selling ROMs, you and I would agree, that is messed up. That is basically copying a movie onto a disc and selling it to somebody. You should not be able to profit off of ROMs and archivals in any way. But the idea of pulling ROMs from old games, we're talking retro here, we're not talking about current, and making those available to people.
I'm going to side with Nintendo on this.
Okay.
Yeah, I know that's going to be an unpopular opinion. Because it is intellectual property. I'm thinking, even though you're not making a profit off of it, you're kind of disseminating it. Which, in my opinion, I understand that there's no easy way to preserve these games. I get that. And I get how a lot of fans are frustrated by that.
Me being one, possibly. I think I've dealt my hand.
Yeah.
Go on, Gerald.
Yeah. So
with your hot take.
Right. So, but that sort of frustration and anger is also how you get these larger businesses to change their practices. So if that frustration is being soothed by ROMs, okay, people really aren't going to have a need to go to Nintendo and say, hey, this is a problem you need to address, because they're having their needs met. So if that dries up, the ROMs dry up, and this frustration and this anger builds, and Nintendo has a very loyal base. If they say, hey, the loyal base, we the loyal base are very frustrated with your inability to offer your older IPs to us that we know and love, you need to address this. We will pay you for it. Now, keeping in mind, this is not addressing buying games several times. Okay, so I do want to.
Yeah, there's a lot of that's what's tough. It's going to be tough to get through this in one episode, because there are so many little pieces of this argument and this discussion that we're not going to have time to get to. But we'll try to do the broad sense, at least here. Maybe address things in the future.
Yeah.
But
so let's for the sake of argument, let's ignore that very important detail. Yeah. Okay, and just say we're willing to purchase this IP that we know and love. The problem is you're not offering it, so we don't have the opportunity to buy it, you know, I see that as kind of being the larger issue here. And I do feel as though the base, again, barring that disclaimer that I just said, would be willing to purchase something direct from Nintendo should they offer it. Though the problem is that they're not offering it. Now, that's not an excuse, in my opinion, to download it as a ROM, even if it is free.
So here's the other issue, though.
Yes.
Nintendo can't offer it. They're not offering it in any physical format. They're offering these old IPs, at least they were on the Virtual Console, and now... So Virtual Console was great. It brought back a lot of stuff as a way to download and purchase and legally have a licensed version of these older games and on a system that you could play and access. Even though they themselves, these games were being emulated, just with Nintendo's emulator on the Wii. And then the Wii U got its own Virtual Console. It continued, it transferred over. All those games still accessible. And now the Switch, they've made it pretty clear the Virtual Console is not happening. There will not be a Virtual Console.
Wow.
So you actually will no longer be able to purchase Virtual Console games. So that is now dead. What they've done now is they've finally introduced Switch's online paid service. Now, this is the first service that Nintendo has offered.
Yeah, explain this to me. I'm unaware of this.
So PlayStation, we have the PlayStation Online.
Correct.
Xbox, you've got Xbox Live.
Right.
Okay. Nintendo, their multiplayer online play was usually free. And there were issues with that. Servers were not always great. There was a lot of disconnects, lag, especially in Smash Brothers, things like that. They have finally, I think it was September it launched, officially Nintendo's online service is now active. I think it's like most of the others, I think it's the cheapest, but like $4 or $5 a month for online. And that allows you to do online play and other things like that. And the servers should be better because we're paying for it. I have not started paying for the Nintendo Switch service. I'm only doing PlayStation Online. That's all I pay for right now. PlayStation Plus, as it's known. And PlayStation Plus, we get those free games every month that we can download, right? That's the other benefit of PlayStation Plus, that and being able to play online. With Nintendo, they are offering, with their online service, access to classic games. So they've taken the Virtual Console and they've monetized it monthly with certain games. Here's the issue, though. PlayStation Plus, those games, if you download a PlayStation Plus game, as long as you're a PlayStation Plus member, you can play it. But if you get rid of PlayStation Plus, you can't access that game. You know that much, right? But let's say I get a discounted game because of PlayStation Plus, which you've been dealing with some Black Friday deals and things like that. There's also PlayStation Plus, gives you an extra 30%. If you spend any amount of money on a PlayStation Plus dealed game, you keep it no matter what. So if I buy a game because I have PlayStation Plus, which gives me 50% off the game, even if I get rid of PlayStation Plus, I paid some amount of money, so I keep that game forever. It's only the free monthly games that you don't keep. So Nintendo Switch's online service, similar to the PlayStation Plus service, those retro classics that you get by paying monthly, you cannot play those games if you ever get rid of Switch Online. So to me, that doesn't archive those games.
Correct.
Because the Virtual Console service went down. And eventually the servers for the Switch, when the new console comes out and the Switch service disappears, those aren't archived. You won't be able to access them anymore without an internet connection. So those aren't archived in that way. But you still side with Nintendo because they're IPs. Okay, so I can see the most popular Nintendo titles. I can see that because there's ways to play them and access them. So you side with Nintendo. Well, what about other companies? What about Konami and some of the games that they had on the Nintendo, but Nintendo doesn't own those?
Right.
Castlevania is not owned by Nintendo.
True.
So would you side that you still shouldn't download a ROM to play Castlevania because Konami owns it and Konami still exists?
I think so. So long as Konami doesn't support that activity, I think it should be prohibited. If they said, hey, this is going to be available to anybody who wants it, then I think that's fine.
You're saying if a Konami put out ROMs, is that what you're saying?
Yes, or even if they were okay with
what Konami makes a statement, hey guys, if you want to download ROMs, we're not upset about it.
We don't have a problem with it.
No company, I think, would ever say that.
Why do you think that is?
Because there's always that chance they could make money on it. Strictly business.
Exactly. See, which is what this is.
Video games aren't business, Gerald. Video games are personal. Video games are personal.
No, and see that's where I think the line gets blurred a little bit. Is it's
a different format, different media.
But it is and it isn't. In that people get connected to these forms of entertainment, this media, and they build these connections and they are passionate about them, and that's great. But it still doesn't negate the fact that it still is intellectual property.
But I think it's their fault because of the way that their intellectual property has been maintained. Let's go back to other mediums.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Obviously, I would agree with you because I'm pretty sure you would say you should not pirate the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles film. You should not go online
mm-hmm.
and illegally download that. You should go buy it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I would agree with that.
How can I buy the film Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 1990?
Right.
How can I buy it?
Right.
Give me all the different ways I could purchase it.
I don't know. I guess maybe Amazon.
Well, format. Sorry, give me the format.
Okay. DVD.
Okay, I could buy it on DVD.
Maybe VHS. Maybe.
Okay, I could. Yeah, probably not new. I'd have to buy a pre-owned VHS.
Yeah. You could. I don't know if there's a digital download of it.
I'm sure there's a streamable. I'm sure Amazon you can rent it. Or you could probably buy it to own to replay as many times as you want. So you could buy it digitally. You could buy it on DVD. VHS we'll ignore because that's not a retail option.
Fair enough.
Blu-ray probably. I'm sure there's a Blu-ray remaster of Ninja Turtles. Okay. Netflix, a streaming service that you can watch it multiple times. It may or may not still exist on there.
Right.
Okay. So formats, they all exist. All right. Now that's the difference between movies and games and other forms of media. Music, same thing. Early days of music, you get it on vinyl. Okay, you get it on an album. Then it moved to cassette. You can buy them on cassette. You can buy them on CD. CDs are starting to die out, but you can still buy pretty much any song that's ever been released digitally through whatever music service you use, iTunes or Amazon Music or Google Play Music or whatever. Okay, and those older songs, I'm talking, let's go even older than video games.
Okay,
so let's go 50s music. You can get plenty of 50s released music on these newer services.
Right.
Because those forms of media have continued to grow with the format.
Right. I think I see where you're continue your thought. I think I see where you're going.
So media continue. Movies continue to come out on the same form. So old movies from I can still get Chinatown starring Jack Nicholson on the current format. The NES had NES cartridges. And then we moved on to a newer cartridge system. We moved on to optical media. The NES format never changed and grew with technology.
Right.
So there is no way currently to buy a console or system or stream service that can play. Well, one, I can't play the cartridge anymore unless I still have a Nintendo that works. I can't go buy a new Nintendo.
Right.
All right. And I can't put my Nintendo cartridge in the PlayStation. I can't put it in the Switch.
Right.
Because they didn't account for the old format. So that old format did not grow.
Right.
Okay. It didn't go from Betamax to DVD to Blu-ray.
Right.
And all the movies continued. They didn't take all the NES games and put them on an optical media that you could play on the newer Nintendo system. Even for PlayStation. There's plenty of PlayStation games that you have no way to play.
Right.
There is no way to play certain PlayStation games unless you have an original PlayStation, you bought the game when it came out, or for the very few games that have been released on the PlayStation 3 and 4 Classics line, where you can download, like Final Fantasy VII, of course, it's the big game. So only the most popular, the 1%ers of the video game IPs are still purchasable, at least digitally, and only digitally. They're not releasing a new disc of the original Suikoden. Konami's not putting that out on disc so you can play it on your PS4 or PS3. You can download it from the PSN store, some of them, but not all the more obscure games.
Right.
So is that whose fault is that?
I think that is Nintendo's fault.
Okay.
So I'm guessing I agree with you there.
Okay. So here's the thing. Does that make it okay to download ROMs?
No.
Why? Just because you're going strict black and white legality?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think because if it is, let's say hypothetically, let's say it's not something that they're overlooking. Let's say they're making a conscious business decision not to offer it for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's their choice. They own the property. It's up to them. Just because they have a rabid fan base, for example, who is hungry for this product, does not make it okay to take.
Okay. Take. Okay. Well, here's the thing. So you would say, and there's plenty of people in the community, in the both web video community, in the gaming community as well, that have a similar thought. There's at least two that I can think of, but I don't want to throw them under the bus.
Sure.
Don't attack anybody. That they had a similar opinion, like, yep, it's illegal. Sorry. You shouldn't be able to. And they made the argument, this particular person, and I know this person, but it still made me mad. Still respect them. But it made me upset because the way they described it was, their response was, just go buy it. I'm like, what? Just go buy it. Just go buy it. Okay, well, let's look at a game that you couldn't buy. So let's say it's a game that has not been released in any other way.
Not available. Gotcha.
It's not released on any current console. It's not available to download from any service. It's not available on Nintendo's eShop. It's not available as a virtual console item. It's not available as a classic item. So the only way that you could technically play that game is if you have the original console and you buy it used from someone. So this is a game you didn't grow up with. You didn't know about it, but you're like, wow, I never knew about that game. I want to experience that game. I want that to be part of my gaming history, part of my gaming resume. I'd love to experience it. But the only way I can do that is to find a used copy of it legally. And that's what this person. Oh, you just need to go find a used copy.
Well, isn't that the moral question with a lot of things? You know, whether it's, I mean, you can justify a lot of things that are legally wrong or morally wrong by saying like, but I just wanted it. Don't I have the right to?
Why don't I have the right to experience it?
Exactly. I mean, you can justify anything that way.
Well, I would say it's different because of that format issue. Because the issue is other forms of entertainment media have progressed with the format, and gaming has not been able to or chose not to progress in a way that archived these items.
Right. I mean, you can justify it however you like, you know, and I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing, you know, like it's.
Oh, I can't wait to read these comments.
Yeah. And that's fine.
It's gonna get intense.
Oh, absolutely.
Hopefully it won't. Actually, our viewers are nice. They probably won't. But they will strongly disagree with one of us.
And that's fine. That's okay. I'm fine with that.
So you're tough. You're a tough cookie. So
again, I'm trying to keep an open mind. Like I'm just from everything that you've explained to me so far, this is just kind of the way that I see it.
Here's that game I referenced. Was that this? I don't even know. So I referenced that game before. I think it was the last episode. Little Samson.
Yes.
For the NES. Several $100s to get that game.
Right.
Okay. It's a game that when it was released would have been the normal retail price, which we'll just say it was probably more. We'll say $60. It was a $60 game. Came out for the Nintendo long ago. You might not have even been born when it came out. Let's say you're a fan and you're like, wow, Little Samson is touted as this amazing platform game. And there is no way to play it. I didn't have an NES growing up. I can't buy a new one. It does not help the developer of that game to put the burden on me to go buy a used copy of it. Me buying a used copy of Little Samson on eBay does not benefit the developer or the company that owns that IP.
I'm with you.
So why is it okay to resell games and that person make hundreds and hundreds of dollars of profit if they've kept it for resale purposes. Why is that okay? But it's not okay for me to download a ROM to where no money is being exchanged at all. Nothing is being purchased. The developer is not losing any money. Nothing is being stolen.
Yeah, well, I think
I'm experiencing it. Why is that not? Why is that worse?
Right. Now, I'm obviously no lawyer here, but I think it comes down to, I mean, personal property. You know, I mean, the same thing can be said for anything, a TV, a car, anything, you know? I think the problem is sort of when you make it massively available, you know, or you duplicate more than your one copy of it. So let's say you bought your one copy of it and you're sort of given that license for that one copy.
Right. Now that's the other thing that gets tricky too, is buying a game a license to play it or a license to own it.
Right.
I know, unfortunately for my argument, it's a license to play it. You have the license to play the game. It's this is you're purchasing this cartridge which gives you access to play it. You're not owning this.
Right. And that actually lends itself into this argument where you're sort of saying, okay, I am selling my license
to play it.
Play it.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I would agree with that because that's the same way with a DVD. If I buy a DVD, I don't own that movie.
Right.
I can't rip it and do anything else I want with it.
And the price comes down to, like, you know, what somebody else is willing to pay you for it. So that's on the buyer's end.
And that's the issue, is that some of these games have gotten to the point where there is a standard price. You cannot get it cheaper. So I'm never able to experience that game because of the issue of the price wall that has been raised or rarity of something.
Correct.
So I should not ever be able to experience that.
No. If you're able to save up or whatever.
Hey, if you want to experience that game, you're going to have to go broke.
Right. Well, exactly. So let's say
if you want to do it legally, you should be broke.
I want the experience.
Sorry for the lack of comedy in this episode.
Right. I want the experience of owning a New York penthouse. I deserve that experience.
I don't feel like that's...
Now it's extreme. It's extreme.
It's extreme.
But I'm just making an example.
Right. I guess. I feel like those aren't quantifiably similar though, because that's something you can go buy new.
Well, now let's say
or have built.
You say quote unquote going broke for this little Samson.
Okay?
Well,
not for little Samson, but some other.
Right. So let's say it cost $300 or $1,000 or some exorbitant amount of money that you're not willing to pay.
Let's say little Samson, to buy a used copy from a reseller, we'll just, for the sake of argument, say it's $1,000.
Okay. Now you won't go broke paying that.
Most people.
Exactly. Now, if you were a 15-year-old with mowing lawns for the summer and you're saving up, you could potentially go broke. I'm putting all my money into this game, and that's your decision, you know?
Okay.
So if you, as a very passionate, collector,
hot-headed,
want this, if it is that important to you, you can completely go out there and buy it.
Now, see, for me, my argument in the video was not that I want it all or that I want it. It was me more worried about the future generations, because that was my thing of archival and preservation. So to me, I am passionate about these games, and I don't like to look at them as just these are, fleeting experiences that don't mean anything. And my thing is more the younger generation being able to experience these things and archiving these things for the future. Because here's the thing. Yeah, Nintendo owns it, or these other, and Nintendo's not even a good example because they're probably they're better at maintaining their IPs than other companies are. Because some of these companies, they don't even exist anymore that made some of these games. So they're not going to be able to re-release them.
Let me say this, and this is something I just thought of hypothetically. So let's say I own a video game. I own my one license of this video game.
You own the cartridge of a game.
Yeah.
You purchased it when it came out.
Right. And let's say through technology, I have the ability to temporarily say, Dave, I know you really want to play this game. Let's say you contacted me, and I have the ability to let you play this game for a week. Like you give me $10 or whatever, or even for free. Say, I'll let you play this game for free. I'll keep the license, but I will loan it to you You know, just because you want the experience.
Okay, so Blockbuster.
Right.
Which was a thing. You could game rental.
Would that satisfy you as a collector to say, I experienced that game?
No. Now the word you just said there, I don't want to end this conversation. I'm not coming at this as a collector.
Okay.
I am not saying my thoughts on this are not based on collecting.
Okay, so as a gamer.
Because I think the word collector is a dirty word.
Okay.
Especially when it comes to this, because a lot of these, I want to say bad words, a lot of these dBs, not decibels.
Right, I'm with you. I got you.
French for shower.
I got you.
Shower sacks.
Right.
A lot of these shower sacks out there are collectors. Now, I look like I have a lot of games, and I do, for the most part, I do have a lot of games, but I would not say I'm a collector just for collector's sake. It's more just, I like to, if I see a game and I'm like, oh, I want that taken care of. I want it saved, archived. I want to be able to access it. But that's a separate argument, because a lot of times these collectors have this sort of, this mindset, I can't think of the word, this sort of elitist mindset where, and it comes back to that person, oh, well, you should just buy the game. And it's like, that's a very collector's mind. Well, if you can't afford it, then you don't get to play it. You don't get to experience it. You don't get to go to the museum and look at that piece of artwork and experience it, because you can't afford to travel to Italy to see it. And that mindset of, oh yeah, you'll never get this game because you can't afford it. Or, oh yeah, I have this prototype and I'm never going to share the ROM. Because there have been experiences in the past where these games that were thought to be lost to time were snatched up by collectors in some auction or some private, some estate sale or something. And then they sort of hoarded over people. I'm like, oh, would you please just dump the ROM so other people can experience it? Like, nope. You can buy it from me for 10 grand and you can dump it. The elitist, that's disgusting. And that's why I don't want, in this aspect, I don't want collector to get brought up.
Okay.
Because it's not an idea of I want it all. It's not I want everything for free. That's not what it is at all.
Point made. So would you be
shower sacks.
Right. Would you be placated having that experience?
A rental experience.
That rental experience saying I was able to play.
Yeah, that would solve the issue, but you're now able to continuously profit off of this IP to the point where you're going to profit more than you spent for your license.
I mean,
at that point, it becomes weird, which is why in Japan, I believe in Japan, it was illegal to rent video games. Whereas here, you could rent video games from video stores.
Right.
I think, they'll correct me, but in Japan, it was illegal.
Or even, or even buying it used and then selling it back. That's a make a lot of money doing that.
If you're a dirty reseller, which I have never, here's the thing. I have many a duplicate of certain games, and it's this weird thing. I don't want to sell them. And it's not because I'm hoarding them. It's because I don't want to, I guess I could just put them up for really cheap, I guess, if I wanted to get rid of these duplicates. But a lot of times...
couldn't you give them away?
I could give them away. There's certain ones I would be fine with giving away. I just have to figure out the way to do that.
Why only certain ones?
What do you mean? The duplicates.
Right.
Yeah, as in...
okay, those
duplicates.
I thought you meant certain duplicates.
No.
Yeah, I'm with you.
No. Now, I will say certain duplicates because I do have games where I will have a backup of it, and a lot of those are disc-based because of the whole disc
and I get that.
thing.
I get that. I get that.
That's more for my favorites. Do I have 2 copies of Final Fantasy IX? Absolutely. Because, come on. Amazing. So good. So...
So
this, you
sorry
smack
about
it, baby.
That. Sorry about that.
So the rental idea, so basically a private rental, but then you're setting up a business and then it'd be a whole different thing. I don't even know if you could do that.
I don't know either. This is all hypothetical.
Not on a mass scale. But why wouldn't you want to just be a kind-hearted individual that offers free rentals? Because here's the thing. You're doing it to me right now, you SOB. You son of a boy.
Right.
You're renting 2 of my games right now.
It's true.
Right? 2? Is it
2? 2 or 3 I have to.
So Gerald is borrowing a couple of my VR games.
It's true.
Currently.
Yep.
Is the sharing and archiving of ROMs just mass scale loaning? Because I'm not giving you my cart to keep.
Right. But you get the ROM to keep, right?
I don't know. What is keeping? It's a digital thing. It's not a physical thing, right?
Right, but I mean...
So do you really keep it?
I mean, if it's on your hard drive or thumb drive or whatever...
I guess.
Yeah. I mean, just like any of these carts, right. Whether it's disc or some other cart, like it's a digital product. It's housed, so it can be read in a certain specific way.
True. So it is different? Is it different?
So
you say that would come back and be like, no, that's copying. You're basically copying it.
Right. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a little confused. I lost my train of thought with as fast as we're going.
All right, so train of thought has been lost to time. So let me reestablish the question.
Okay.
I think it was a question I made. I posed. So what I was saying, you were talking about renting, and then we got into borrowing, and I was saying, isn't me dumping a ROM from an NES cart that is not purchasable and uploading it online, me just lending it to people?
No, because I think it's the same as, hey, Dave, let me make a copy of those video games. But you're doing it on a scale that is potentially infinite, So me borrowing these games from you, it's you're basically loaning me your license. You can't play it right now. So you're loaning it to me. So
the fact that loaning means that the initial person can't play it while the other person's loaning it?
Right.
Okay, all right. Well, I tried. All right, so let me try to... Here's the thing. You might not be as passionate about old school games, which makes it harder for you to have that mindset, which is good.
Right, but also easier for me to see it for what it is, because sometimes the passion blinds one.
You basically, in a roundabout way, said it makes it easier for me. It makes it easier to see it the right way. Is essentially what you just said. Disagree. Yeah, my thing. Let's get back to preservation.
Okay.
Preservation.
Okay.
After a game break.
Whoa.
All right, so we've got a very long and phallic package here from John Hicks.
Hey, John.
Thank you, John. This is sent to Game Dave, P.O. Box 1695, Dover, Delaware 19903, Planet Earth.
I'm really glad you put that there.
I think you're real funny.
Yeah, John, that's important.
So let's take a look here.
This is important.
From from John Hicks.
Funny.
Well, thanks, John, for sending something in. We got some...
I'm excited.
Taped up little postery looking thing here.
Yeah.
All right. Let's put that little tape there. Ooh! Oh, that's fresh. That's fresh. Let's see what we got here. It seems...
I hope it's like a giant can of Pringles.
To be a poster. Yeah, it's just Pringles. Hey, man, why don't you pop?
Look at this.
All right.
Do you need a hand here?
I don't want to open it yet.
I'll hold it.
You hold that.
Got it.
All right, let's see here. Something else in there. Oh.
Oh, this might be...
We've got a note.
A note.
It's
like it was in a bottle.
Always, yes.
Look at that. Did you find this in the sea?
I did. It was sent via boat. What do you call that? What's that? There's surface mail, surface to air mail.
Yeah, I don't know.
Boat mail. Oh gosh, I don't want to ruin boat mail. Can you send that via boat mail, please? That'd be great. I don't want to ruin
Planet
this.
Earth, mind you.
Oh, good Lord.
Whoa.
We got a full-on note.
It's like a scroll. Look at this.
Here's the problem with scrolls.
Right.
The constant roll. That's why it needs the little bar there. Okay. Mr. Game Dave.
Ooh.
Hey, this is Social Lizard, who you responded to in your video games /art episode. Oh, well, thanks. My real name is John, which we've just learned.
Yeah.
My buddy and I are big fans of your show. Well, shout out to you and your buddy, John. We also like Gerald a lot, too.
Hey,
that's
thanks,
nice.
guys.
Well, maybe not after this episode. It's obvious you guys are good friends, even though I didn't even know he had moved. We're probably roughly you guys' age. We're both 37. Been friends since we were 14. That's awesome.
Yeah.
We appreciate that you're both thoughtful about how you approach subjects, yet don't seem to take yourselves too seriously as you keep things light and fun, again, until this episode. I also consider the PS1 my favorite console. It's because it's the best. JRPGs being my favorite genre, because they're the best. Like you, I also grew up playing Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, starting with 2nd edition, and consider Baldur's Gate one of my favorite PC games. I could go on. I love Baldur's Gate, by far one of my faves. On to the item. Many years ago, I used to work at a record store, and we'd get promotional items. I would randomly take whatever posters the store was going to throw away and give them to friends, sometimes as gag gifts, if the movie was terrible. I recently found a buttload of posters that never made it to friends' hands. I have no idea what I'd do with an old Shanghai Noon poster.
Wow.
But figured maybe you'd enjoy it as you're a fan of Jackie Chan. I hope you do. You were the first person I thought of when I saw it. Isn't that wild? Or maybe it creeps you out that some old dude thought of you. Hey, not in that way. I've got a woman. Been together 10 years this year.
Congratulations, John. That's
yes,
great.
Congrats. Yikes. I mean, wow. Yay. Kidding. She's my best friend, too. Well, regardless, that's a good shout out. You're going to...
Yeah.
No, you won't be sleeping on the couch anytime soon. Well, regardless of how creeped out you are, the poster is yours. A thank you of sorts. My very best wishes with your show. John Hicks, Social Lizard, October 25th, 2018.
Wow.
What a thoughtful letter. I'm
Dave, you have
that.
a great community here.
Almost too good.
You know?
Shanghai Nights, by far my favorite. No. Hold it. Just hold it straight up, right in front of the mics.
All right.
Here we go. There they are.
Look at that.
Exclusive video bonus edition, Shanghai Noon. 2 thumbs up from Roger Ebert there. Owen Wilson and Jackie Chan. Oh, how awesome. That's awesome. Thank you.
That's fantastic.
You know, that is my first ever Jackie Chan related poster. Despite what you want to say about this being the white version of Rush Hour. Come on.
That's fantastic.
It's a buddy movie.
It's a buddy movie.
Without Chris Tucker.
Yeah.
Hey, I got something to watch.
Right?
I don't have to watch him tonight.
Right?
Celebrate. Thank you so much, John, the Social Lizard.
That is cool, man.
What an awesome piece of fan mail. That was so fun. Now let's get back into being angry.
Okay.
Thanks for joining us on that game break. Oh, back to the topic at hand. So
Right.
I wanted to get back into... Sure, yeah, I can, even in my video on the death of video game preservation, which is what I titled it because that was more clickable. But I do really feel like it is the death of video game preservation. Here's the thing.
Okay.
Back to my movies and music argument. My argument is no longer about legality because even in my video, I said there is no question, even though there's a gray area in the moral understanding of this entertainment and the experiences, there is no argument of the legality of ROMs because, yes, buying the license. So I'm not disagreeing with you about the legality. I'm disagreeing with the fact that this is a legal issue that should be bent. And this is where that gray area shows up, where the greater good of these experiences. This is a greater good argument.
That's a slippery slope, my friend.
This is a greater good argument where I disagree with the legality when it comes to video games. And I totally say, yes, technically it is illegal. But here's the thing. I wonder if that website that did get sued by Nintendo did not have ads on it and wasn't making any sort of profit.
Right.
Because, again, they are not sites I supported.
Right.
If they were making zero profit, would that lawsuit have gone through? Because, again, I don't know the judges. I don't know how it was argued, how the case was argued.
Interesting.
Because here's the thing. You think there was a young retro gamer on the judge?
Right.
On the jury, whatever it was? Were the judges retro gamers? Would they have the connection and understanding to get the difference here? I don't know. But I think either way, the way the outcome happened, it is what it is. My problem is the precedent that could be set that comes down the line that frightens ROM websites and archivists. That's my fear, where people are going to be afraid to even do things. There's the hacking community. So, great example. I didn't bring this up in my review, but it's something I'd love to talk about right now. I recently, the last episode of Family Corner was New Ghostbusters 2, which again, Gerald doesn't watch any of my videos. I released this around Halloween, a little bit after Halloween, because it took me a while to make it. New Ghostbusters 2 is to me, the best old school Ghostbusters game ever made. A lot of the Ghostbusters games were trash on the Nintendo. And New Ghostbusters 2, there was a licensing issue, so this game could not come out here. And it was made by HAL Labs, the same people that made Kirby and many other amazing games. And you can be any of the 4 Ghostbusters and Louis Tully even if you want, because it's based on Ghostbusters 2.
That is cool.
And it's a very quick sort of action game where you are collecting all the ghosts in each level. So you go up to a ghost, you beam them with the proton beams, and then the other, you pick 2 characters. The other one is a computer-controlled character.
Right.
By pressing the other button, they'll send the trap out and catch them. So they'll automatically walk over and trap. So you're bust, catch. It's very quick, fun, simple game, very satisfying. Short, sweet, delicious. And there is a couple of ROM-related things that I could have talked about in the video, but I didn't want to stain it with that conversation. I wanted to focus on just how good the game is, so I didn't want to get into it. The hacking community. So ROM hacking is another very big community,
Right.
Where they will take retro game ROMs and modify the code and the ROM itself to either make a different game or maybe a remixed version of a game. And they've done that with New Ghostbusters 2, where they took New Ghostbusters 2 and they modified it graphically and made it better. They modified the sprites. They modified the way the proton packs look. They look more like the ones from the film.
Gotcha.
The suits look more accurate to the movie. Vigo is modified so he doesn't look like he's bald, because in the final scene where you fight Vigo, his hair is pulled back weird, and the painting makes it look like he's
bald.
He's bald instead of having long flowing hair.
Right.
So that was another little change they made. But here's the thing that I think spawned the change, and they released this hack as New Ghostbusters 2 Plus.
Gotcha.
And you could download it, patch the ROM, and play this updated version, which is, in a way, the definitive way to play it. Probably the best way. It's not the way it was intended when it came out. So it's a hack. And in that game, in the old games, a lot of times Winston was forgotten. He was left out as a playable character. The Genesis game, you could only play as the 3 stupid white guys.
Right.
Winston is awesome, all right? Winston's a more awesome Ghostbuster. But in this game, Winston appeared. However, his color palette, I know the Nintendo can make the color brown.
Oh, was it tan?
He's like this weird bluish gray alien color.
Interesting.
Very weird. So they modified his skin tone to be more accurate in this New Ghostbusters 2 Plus hack. The hacking community wouldn't exist if it weren't for ROMs. How does that work? In the legality argument, it should just never. That never should exist.
So again, I'm just shooting from the hip here.
Shoot that hip.
I'm thinking the hack isn't like that's.
Oh, the hack is
completely legal.
Can't argue that that's illegal. It's completely legal because they took their own cartridge and modified. Well, they didn't take the cartridge; they took the ROM and modified.
Right, but I understand what you're saying. So are you trying? So what is your question, basically? So I thought your question was:
should that hack? Do you feel like so in your world that hack would never exist? You okay with that? Because there would be no legal way for that person to share that hack.
Okay, so
because they couldn't put it back on a cartridge and sell it because that would be illegal. Hacks couldn't exist without ROMs. And in a way, this has never been fully argued at a court level. If it's even legal to dump ROMs, there is no precedent on whether or not it is legal to dump a ROM from a cartridge. So it might not even be legal to even dump the ROMs for your own archive.
So what you're saying is so the question you're asking me is this,
are you okay with that being the law?
Because otherwise this hack would not have been created. This art would not have been created.
Yeah, there's people who would probably have never gotten into game programming if it weren't for ROMs.
Yeah, I'm
and
completely fine
hacking.
with that.
You're fine with that non-existing.
Yeah,
so you're
fine
fine.
with that.
Because you heard it here first. Gerald will kill your dreams.
Because here's the thing: if the hack is to make the original more accurate,
that hack.
Right. This is the only one we're talking about. This is the only one we're talking about.
Right now.
Right now. It's the only one we're talking about. There's nothing to tweak. There's nothing to fix if the original is, are we talking if that exists or not? Is that what we're talking about? Or are we talking about it if
I'm just saying, are you okay with that community not existing? Because here's the other thing. There's also hacks where they'll take the base game and they will create, there's a Castlevania hack that makes almost an entirely new game.
Oh, that's cool.
There's also one that takes, I think, Castlevania 2, which is considered tricky because there's a lot of issues with it, and it goes through and fixes a lot of those issues to make it like, wow, this is such a better game.
You need the original ROM in order to play the hacked version.
The only way to use hacks is with a ROM. Yes.
Okay.
The only way to play it physically.
So let's not get distracted here. So you're saying take away the original ROM makes the hack inaccessible.
Yeah, there's no way you can do that.
And am I okay with that?
Yeah.
Yes, I am okay with that.
So you're okay with the whole community never coming to light? Because there could be thousands of kids who got into programming and coding and game development because of those ROMs and hacks.
Sure.
That would, they might be.
But there are clearly hundreds of other ways for them to enter that.
Maybe, but it's that thing of inspiration.
Oh, absolutely. Like it's there are other ways to.
I would not have gotten back in. Here's the thing. Game Dave probably would never have existed the way that it does now had it not been for emulation. Because in 2002, which I think is the exact year that I first experienced that ZSNES emulator and those ROMs at the high school. That was the first time I ever experienced it. I was like, what is this? It's called emulation. It emulates the old games. And these are ROMs that you download and post.
And it just kind of blew your mind.
And it blew my mind. I was like, this is amazing. And it took me back to my best friend's house in first grade. And I would go over, or maybe it was third grade. I don't know, first, second, third, one of those elementaries.
I'm with you.
We'd go to his house, my best friend, and he had the Super Nintendo. We would play Mario Kart all night. And then he'd be like, I'm going to bed. I'd be like, I'm playing Mario Kart. Why you go to bed?
Right.
And that brought back I was like, oh my gosh, I miss this old school stuff. Because at that point, I was into the PlayStation.
Right.
And the PS2. So that's where I was at that time. PS1, PS2 in high school. Those were the consoles. And I had sort of stopped there. I was still playing a lot of my older PlayStation 1 games, but going before that, prior to that, the Super Nintendo and the NES, Game Boy even, those older consoles the older consoles were out of my mind at that point. It wasn't something that I thought about. And I never would have gotten back into that nostalgia level and those old school games and the history of these old games and things I may have missed out on if it wasn't for that, because that re-inspired me to bring those games out of the closet, because I still had some of those Super Nintendo games that I had like 2 or 3 NES games left from when I sold all my old NES games. And that inspired me to get an NES. Like, in a way, it brought me back into gaming more than modern stuff probably would have. Now, this was before the Virtual Console popped up. Maybe the Wii Virtual Console would have done it for me.
Right.
I don't know.
So what we're asking here is, does the ends justify the means?
Well, that's always the question.
Right.
Okay. Because here's the thing: it's man's law, but it may not be God's law.
That's true.
That ROMs are legal.
That's true. That is true.
So what I want to know, Gerald, is what does God think about this? Would God be upset about it? Because that's really all that matters.
Right. It's true. You know what? It's a true statement. True statement.
Who cares if these elitist collectors say, it's illegal, so you should never be able to do it.
Right.
Well, you're not God.
Right.
Though I guess God does say to follow the law. Right?
Tricky.
Even if it's not his.
Tricky.
I'm very confused. Let's get real spiritual all of a sudden. It's a very delicate topic for many. You could tell from the spawn of, at least the one from Charles Stewart on YouTube. He was very, very passionate about how he wanted to, make his voice heard with his money. He's like, well, I will not support Nintendo properties anymore, like he did with the Xbox One. And they listened.
Right, exactly. And that's my point. So if the Nintendo community said, because of this, we are not supporting the Switch, that would impact the success of the Switch, hands down.
Absolutely.
Nintendo would listen.
Absolutely.
They would be forced to listen.
So I will we're going to disagree. I'm a greater good guy. I've always been chaotic good when I play Dungeons and Dragons. You are more of a, sounds like you're a little more lawful good. Maybe you should be playing Paladins, Gerald.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm not going to let you play chaotic good if we start up a D&D group because this situation right here. Yeah, so I would say I'm more greater good on this.
Okay.
And the preservation thing is I want to get back to that.
Well, here's the thing. I like to think of myself more as maybe neutral good.
Well, why don't you prove it?
You know, because if it is an unjust law, you know,
I think it's unjust for the greater good of video game preservation. I'm not saying no one's being necessarily hurt, except for the young people's future. That's what's being damaged.
Now, here's a question here. Does video game preservation mean these games are being preserved at XYZ location, or does it mean that they're being preserved and are available for anyone to play at any time and experience it?
This is another argument that one of those shower sacks brought up. A very similar argument.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, people are saying, because I don't know if they saw my video on it.
Okay.
They did not make a big video response on it. I did, and I'm sure it was seen because it has several 100,000 views, which is not typical for my channel, which is fine. I like my community. But that video did very well. It reached more people than expected, and I have a feeling they saw my video because one of the things they said, they kind of referred to people like me as sort of like just whining about wanting everything, which is not the case at all. And what did they say? They were like, they don't understand archival and preservation. They don't know what that means. These people. I was like, you're talking about me. I know you're talking about me. But they basically pointed out that, this stuff is preserved and it's archived. You just don't have access to it. And you shouldn't have access to it. You probably don't deserve, you don't need to just get access to it. But they made the comment in the way that, yeah, all this stuff is archived somewhere. You just don't have access to it. Do you think that's okay or not? Should you be able to access that stuff? Just because it's in a museum doesn't mean everything's in that museum available.
Well, let's look at this. And I just thought of this right now. The Disney Vault. Disney releases its movies.
Okay.
Again, they're not always available.
I'll listen to you, but I will say film is very, very, it's so different.
It is an experience though, right?
Yeah, but see, we change that experience when we play the game. That's why I said in my video, I said ownership to me is where the greater good, tricky, chaotic good stuff happens. Ownership changes with video games because I think a movie is a movie, right? And yeah, it's like, oh yeah, but I interpreted the movie different than you interpreted it. But everything you see and everything that happens in the action is the same every time that movie's played. Not with a video game. It can be super different. Your experience in Witcher 3 and the way you play that game can be totally different than my experience.
Maybe so, but that is a limited distinction. Like, you're not gonna be like, I play The Witcher 3 as a businessman. You know what I mean? Like, it's gonna be
Fable.
Right. But I'm talking about specifically
The Sims.
But I'm talking about specifically The Witcher. You're going to be like, did you use mostly magic? Did you use did you use heavy armor or did you use light armor? Did you use a lot of magic or did you use two-handed weapons? Like, whatever.
Okay, here's this then.
Okay.
I watch Back to the Future. Okay. DeLorean comes out. Marty ends up in the past. He's got to get back. It's linear. Okay. The Witcher, how many things are there you don't have to do to beat the game?
And that's true too. So you have
remember when you went into this dungeon and there was the ice dungeon? I'm like, ice dungeon? There was an ice dungeon? Experience is different. Different experience. I think it's significantly different because of the interactivity of it. When you add that interactivity, I think that
I think you're reaching.
Art form, I'm reaching because that's what I believe.
I think you're reaching.
I think I'm reaching for the correctness of it. But let's go back and I'll let you fake win your argument for legality, because you're like, okay, what about the companies that don't exist anymore that made these games?
It's the same thing, or at least again, I'm shooting from the hip here.
So you would still be legally anti-mob?
Yeah, because here's the thing. What about those painters? Da Vinci. He's not available anymore. He can't make new work. Why? Because he's dead. these companies, they're dead. You know?
Okay.
So they can't make more releases. They can't make things available. They're dead.
But I can go online and Google the names of his artwork and see it and experience it. I can't do that without those ROMs. Different. Because I can go up and I can look up and I can see that artwork.
Right.
I can do it online for free right now.
Right.
In an archived fashion.
Right. Now, is that the same as seeing it in real life? Because you could make a bastardized version of, of these games, right?
Yeah.
Or you could,
it's called emulation. Because like I said, emulation is not pixel perfect recreations because the emulation is doing its best job, its best estimation of emulating what the NES hardware would do when it presents that ROM. So technically, it would be the same as me looking at a picture of that picture. It's emulating the ROM to the best of its ability. So it is not the exact experience of me putting the NES cartridge in my NES and playing it on a CRT television, which you can't even do because you can't even get CRTs anymore.
Right. So
there is no true way to play any game anymore because CRT technology is eventually going to be gone. And they're not making new CRTs.
Right. Do you think...
So the exactness of it is not... I think you're reaching.
Okay. Fair enough.
Sorry, I said that.
Fair enough.
Because it isn't a pitch perfect 3, the movie. I don't... Is there a third one of those?
I don't know.
It's not a pitch perfect recreation of it.
I'd be curious to know...
It's allowing you enough to where you'd be like, this is what it was like.
What is the law on artwork like this? Obviously, you can... Mona Lisa, you can Google that. And you can have that as your background, as your desktop.
I feel like I'm not going to miss anything looking at it.
You'd be wrong.
Well, I don't know because I feel about museums and art.
Right. But for the sake of argument, let's just say hypothetically, it's that you get the same thing. Oh, there's 2 eyes, there's a nose, it's a woman. This is a Mona Lisa. I don't know what the big deal is. Whatever.
Hey man, there's pretty high res images of the Mona Lisa.
Let's just say
online.
hypothetically. Okay. What does the law say about that? I'm curious because
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer.
No. Me neither. But I would be curious to know in the context of this argument.
I think there's more law about those forms of art, and that's and that's the issue is that it's always that it's a legal gray area. It's like kind of, but I think a lot of that is just I don't know lawyers.
Now
are there any lawyers that watch the show? Please drop it. But again, the legality aspect, I know there's legal gray areas that there's lines I'm more willing to cross than you.
See? And
which
now, does that make it right?
I'm not saying it's right or wrong. I'm just saying for the fact of preservation and archival, it sickens me that these companies don't care about these games the way we do. Because they are businesses. They want to make money.
But even so, that does, just because you're more passionate about it, does not make it your property all of a sudden.
Property is kind of complicated because memories are property.
Memories like in our mind?
Yeah, that's my memory.
Wow.
My experiences are property.
Wow.
You're basically, you're not allowing me to have the property of those memories of those games because you don't want to maintain the format so that other people can experience them. This is the last thing I want to say because this is already getting long. And we've barely scratched
this. Has been a fun conversation.
It's intense. We've barely scratched the surface. The last thing I want to say is what I thought of the most when I made my video. Like it or hate it, most people liked it. Okay, a lot of thumbs up. Good ratio. I expected a lot more hate when I posted that, but I wanted to say it because I was very passionate about it. I wasn't thinking the same way as I am right now about it. I just got it out and said it. Might be good for you to watch it after this.
Sure.
But the person I was thinking of is the Game Dave fan that is not an adult, that sees me talk about a game that is inaccessible, and they want to experience that game. And they have no way to do it because either it's financially limiting,
Mm-hmm.
they have no way to purchase it, their parents aren't going to see that experience the way they do, and they're like, no, we're not going to buy that $800 retro Nintendo game
Right.
from before I even made you with your mom.
Right. Right.
That's, in case you didn't know, that's how children are made.
Mm-hmm.
Then,
Spoiler alert.
or there is no archival of this game. It was lost to obscurity, and I talked about it maybe in a video.
Mm-hmm.
And I see the kids that I have met at conventions that come up to me, and I remember one in particular. I don't know if I've told this story on the show ever, maybe. So I was at MagFest, the Music and Gaming Fest in National Harbor, Maryland, and I was browsing the games there, and a woman comes over to me and says, "Hi, are you Game Dave?" I said, yes, I'm Game Dave. I was like, oh, unique fan. And she said, well, my son, he's over there, and he was sort of shyly, like, waiting in the wings.
Right.
He's like, he loves your show, and would you be willing to meet him? I was like, yeah, of course. That's why I'm here.
Right.
And I was much smaller channel at this time. So this was years ago.
Okay.
Years ago. So I don't even know if I had 10,000 subscribers yet. I may have had 10, 15,000 subscribers. So it was a pretty small channel for a kid to be that. Like, it was pretty awesome. And so she waves him over or whatever, and we're talking. I introduced myself. He said very little. He was super shy.
Starstruck.
It was awesome. It was a crazy experience. And she just kind of told me about his story, and she said, yeah, it's not the new games, because back then I had done a lot of Wii U reviews. I did a lot of modern stuff initially on the channel, and I was starting to get more into the retro stuff, so I assume maybe he liked the Wii U reviews I did of like Wii Sports Club and Wii Fit U, and she was like, oh, he really loves these old retro games. And a lot of kids his age, I think he was 8 or 9, he looked like 8 or 9, and she's like, his friends, they're not interested. They're playing just the new games. They don't know anything about old Nintendo and Atari and Super Nintendo. This kid was in all this old stuff. And she was just talking about how he watches your show because he feels like he can connect with you and somebody to experience just this passion for the retro old school games with. And because at school, the kids are like, what are you talking about?
Right.
Life Force.
Right. Oh, Life Force. Oh.
Yeah, you care about that game, don't you? What if you had no way to ever see it again? I guess you don't care.
I'm fine with that.
Yeah, you son of a gun. Yeah. He's not. You're right. He's not a gamer. He's not a gamer. So, she told me this. Now this is where killed me. She says, "Well, it was funny. A while ago, he was really sick, and they did some sort of like wish thing, and I was like, was it Make-A-Wish? I was like, maybe it was like sounded like it was a terminal thing.
Right.
Or they didn't know.
It was
like,
serious enough to.
He was hospital ridden for a long time.
Okay.
And they did something, and what he asked for was a bunch of retro game stuff.
That is
and
super
they brought him
sweet.
like an Atari and an old Nintendo and games and stuff. And he somehow
Old soul.
Old soul, he gets it. And I'm even kind of an old soul for my age. And miraculously, he got better.
Wow.
Probably because of
those games.
because of the great archival of those old school.
Yeah.
That's not even what it was. But so he got better, and she said he would watch Game Dave in the hospital and stuff like that. I was like,
right?
Oh,
like if
crushed
nothing
me.
else ever comes of this channel,
at least I did
right
that.
there, like that's
Pulled that off.
wow.
And I remember because Corey and Tri were there too, and they were like watching in the wings, and Corey was like, "That was the sweetest thing I've ever seen."
Right?
And I was like,
Right?
"Oh, made it all worth it." And so he talked a little bit. I shook his hand. I gave him a button. Gave him my last Game Dave button.
Look at that.
And yeah, so it was just really. She was like, "Yeah, so it was so cool that he got to meet you. Thank you so much." He said very little, but if you're out there watching, buddy, I still thinking of you.
Yeah.
And leave a comment if you're still out there.
Yeah.
Because I got a picture together, and I was like, share that on Twitter. I'd love to, feel free to keep in touch. And she was like, well, I just made the Twitter, so I'll try to figure out how to do that. I was like, oh, and nothing ever showed up. I never heard anything. Man, that was years ago. But that kid is the kid that I think of when I'm thinking about ROMs and emulation, because for a lot of these games, that might be the only way he could experience them. Because the Marios and the Donkey Kongs and like this stuff the Bomberman, like games that are just iconic. Kirby, we know that's not going anywhere. People are going to be able to, but what about that obscure stuff? If he's that much of a fan, if he cares that much about it, he's going to want to get into the, like, just Family Corner alone, the import scene is stuff that I would have never known about.
Right.
Ever. I never would have been able to experience this stuff. Super Back to the Future 2, which we opened up on the show not that long ago. That's a game I never knew existed. Outside of, I mean, it was probably a lot of it, emulation and ROMs are a way. The first time I experienced, I told you I played a ROM of it. Technically, was that legal? Crazy.
Crazy world.
It's a crazy world. So that's what I think of. That kid is like, oh, hey, sorry. It's not legal. You can't experience this like Game Dave did. That's not, nope, you're not going to be able to. Especially for the companies that don't exist anymore. If there's no way to access this stuff anymore, and the company's never going to release it in any digital format, the used copies have all disintegrated to time. We talk about PlayStation 1, and the people who say that the shower sacks that say, well, you should, if you care that much about it, you should go find a used copy of it and buy it, no matter what the price. What's going to happen 20, 30 years down the road when these discs disintegrate and the disc-based games are not accessible because physically they don't exist. And the companies, you think they're like, oh, we better make sure we get all the ISOs and ROMs of these games for archival purposes, just in case. It's not going to make them money to spend time archiving these ROMs. There's no financial benefit for them doing that. So when these are gone, and we didn't because it was illegal or frowned upon, those games are gone. And then you have these old, just like old films, that the Doctor Who thing, where there's like these old Doctor Who shows, episodes that were lost to time because the BBC didn't think about archiving them properly, and they're just lost. But some have been saved because of fans who copied things off of, those hardcore fans saved this art because they were forward thinking. Because these companies, they're like, I can't make money. We're not going to give, 18 people a salary to download ROMs every day and check them and archive them. We can't afford that.
Right.
We're not going to make money on these old games. Nobody cares about this crap. And then they're gone. Life Force is gone.
Life Force is gone.
Because Konami didn't care. I think it was Konami.
I think it was too.
That's where the greater good comes in. So in that respect, not even in that respect, would you bend the rules for that?
I feel like that's a conversation for part 2.
If it ever happens. But no Q&A. There's just too much. But we want to say thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Digitally Distracted. If you have a topic that can be as intense as this one, make sure you leave it in the comments. You can also find me on Twitter. Use the hashtag Digitally Distracted to make it easier for me to search for it. Comments, topics, questions for the Q&A. If you want to send fan mail in, it's P.O. Box 1695, Dover, Delaware 19903. Until next time, I'm Game Dave.
I'm Gerald.
Thanks for getting digitally distracted with us.